Man the barricades, patrol the cover boundary. At last the time is come, this is a cricketing emergency. Hear this call to arms for every cricket revolutionary. Take up your bats and stumps for the test match insurgency. At first they tried to silence us, but we would not be silenced. They threatened us with lies, so we threatened them with violence. Che Guevara, Sangakkara, Joseph Stalin, Douglas Jardine, Robespierre, Darrell Hare, Vladimir Lenin, O'Brien Kevin, guerrilla cricket.
T20 test on one day. India, England, Australia. A four-up lucky big three-side slayer. What a player! What a player! What a player! Discusses, zinger bells and white balls to hells. Baggy greens for long from New South Wales. Is the RPL heaven or hell? Will the 100 fail or do quite well? What a player! What a player! What a player!
The leading independent voice of cricket audio providing worldwide commentary on the internet. It's a ball-by-ball commentary, and they cover everything: test matches, ODIs, T20 cricket, and recently I've caught that they are covering the 100 as well. The fellas are back on Waadaplaya. Continuation of Knuckle and the Bear. Welcome, chaps. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Good morning to you all.
Yeah, good
Delighted
morning.
to be
Very
here.
well.
Thank you.
Excellent. And we got Vishak and Santosh who are substituting on this concussion sub-series. First things first, you and families are doing okay. We are going to preview the India Tour of England 5 test matches coming up, which will be pretty exciting. I know there's a lot of cricket going on, and Vishak, why don't we jump into the squads to see what happens when Ben Stokes is not there? And I'm surprised about Moeen Ali, but we'll get to it. Vishak, take it over.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, before the squads, let's quickly look into how the series is panned out. So the series starts in 4 days' time on August 1st. First to 8 at Trent Bridge, then followed by just a 4-day gap and the second test at Lord's, the home of cricket. Then the third test, we have quite a gap between the second and the third test, which is about 9 days. On August 25th to 29th is the third test at Headingley, followed by the fourth test at the Oval, September 2nd to 6th, and again followed by a 4-day gap and the final test at Old Trafford. So then quickly moving into the squads.
So with Ben Stokes pulling out, who do you think is the worthy replacement, or who are they bringing in, or have they?
They brought in Overton.
Craig Overton's been brought into the squad. Probably won't be in the first 11. But
No.
Gets the
Well,
ball there.
yeah, I was thinking about this. I mean, Sam Curran's, he's not as good a bat as Ben Stokes, but he does seem the obvious replacement. I mean, we've got a lot of options there. I mean, we've almost so many bowling options. It's ridiculous.
Robinson,
But you've got to strike a bat. I'm thinking if you're going to replace number 5, Ben Stokes, with an all-rounder, you pick Sam Curran if you still want the available options.
I mean, my team that I did had Stokes and Curran in it.
Well, mine probably would have, but obviously Stokes isn't there. But yeah,
if you want, it depends. We're not quite sure which way in England we're going to go. Whether they were going to play, 6 batters and Butler and 4 bowlers, or whether they're going to go with more of an all-rounder type strategy where you have Sam Curran, particularly with Ben Stokes. I don't know how much he's not done a great deal of bowling recently, and
No.
I think he's much more valuable to England as a Test batter than he is as a bowler. If you want a batter to be in that slot, then Dan Lawrence would be the obvious choice at number 5 if he wasn't going to play already. We think Ollie Pope is going to miss that first test, but I think this makes Sam Curran and Ollie Robinson playing more likely as 2 bowlers who can genuinely bat, and in Sam Curran's case is kind of a bowling all-rounder. So I think this probably does change the balance of the team a little bit in that it makes it more kind of all-rounder heavy.
I mean, from a red ball perspective as well, for Ben Stokes, he had a great 2020 and a bit of a shocker in 2021. But then I think, if I'm right, he's only played the India tests in 2021 in India. So in 2020, 12 innings, averaged 58 with the bat, highest 176, got 19 wickets at about 18. In 2021, he averaged 25 and 5 wickets at 30. So it's not been an upward direction. I mean, and then that might all be part of a couple of things. One is obviously we got a mauling in India in conditions that clearly were difficult for us, rightly or wrongly for England. But it's definitely not an upward trajectory in terms of his performances from a test perspective at the moment. Maybe he was due a rest anyway.
I don't think that series has much bearing. I don't think that series has much bearing on this one. The conditions are so different that it's very difficult to draw a parallel. Stokes' performances at times in that series were heroic. Bowling, he bowls these incredibly long spells at pace, and he batted okay in some of those games. He did get found out early by Ashwin, which is a known.
82 though, didn't he? So
he did, and batted superbly. It was a fine innings. He certainly, of the players who struggled in that series. I mean, almost everyone struggled with the bat on both sides in that series. Of course, it's a huge loss. Of course, it's a huge loss, and it'll take some rebalancing. Officially, he's only out for the first 2 tests, but given that the whole series only lasts 6 weeks, just over 6 weeks, I would struggle to see him playing any part in this series, and probably it's not a good idea for him to play any part in this series.
Yeah.
I don't know if we might do this later, but I did kind of do my kind of predicted 11s for this, but I suppose we can come on to that later if you like. But yeah, I think Bear's right. I think Curran is, if he wasn't already going to be playing in that first test, I think he definitely is now.
I think with Sam Curran was the man of the series in the previous series against India as well. So I think he would be an ideal replacement, as you had already mentioned, for Ben Stokes. With his batting, and he's also a kind of seamer who can bowl with the new ball and swing it. So I think, as Nakul, you mentioned, he would be an ideal replacement. And now talking about Jimmy Anderson, he's 39. We have to commend his longevity, and he's just 2 wickets behind Kumble. So he's at 617, and Kumble when he retired, he was at 619 wickets. So your comments on Anderson and his longevity. He's been a great bowler for England.
I think he's going to be the differentiator, according to me. I mean, for India to win a series, he's going to be a key one. But interested to hear Gorilla's.
Well, yeah, I mean, the 2 tests we had against New Zealand were actually kind of odd in England. It was about 30 degrees and the ball wasn't swinging. On the days it was swinging, the wind was blowing. It wasn't really very effective. And him and Broad didn't have particularly good series. In fact, some of us Gorillas are going, they're going to retire. But you know what? The weather in England is progressively getting worse. We're going to be ending this series in mid-September. There are going to be a few hazy days and the ball is going to be swinging like I don't know what. And he's the best exponent of it in the world currently. And I expect him to get a hatful of wickets against India.
He goes well against India generally.
Yeah, he does.
Wickets at 25.
To be fair, he goes well against everyone these last few years.
Yes,
well, he's got
exactly.
more wickets against India than any other country that he's played. So India are his favourite target based on pure volume of wickets. Test series starts at Trent Bridge. He loves Trent Bridge. Let me see what at Trent Bridge. He's got 64 wickets in tests at just a shade under 20. So he's if he's getting older, he's also getting cannier and getting wiser. So they won't go on forever. Will he and Broad? There's no, people can't. But I'm pretty sure he's got this Ashes in mind as being the swan song. And he'll want a good series in India to lock himself in for that. Against India to lock himself in for that.
I think
he won't let England down this series.
No, I mean England's seam bowling won't be the issue this series. I think that's true on both sides, to be honest. That the seam bowling, the standard of seam bowling in that World Test Championship final from India and New Zealand was unbelievable on both sides, and that was without Jasprit Bumrah bowling at his best. There's some fantastic seam bowlers on display on both sides. You look at England. Mark Wood might not make that first test. Chris Wokes is out of those first 2 tests, and England can still put the very good attacking together. Jofra Archer might not play any part in this series, and they can still put in a very, very good seam attack. We've been saying the same thing about James Anderson for the last several years. He just keeps getting better and better and fitter and fitter. He knows his game unbelievably well. When the ball's not swinging, he's so hard to get away. When the ball is swinging, he's lethal. You don't have to worry about James Anderson. His record, he's averaging in the low 20s since he turned 35. I remember the 13-14 Ashes at the end of that series. People were wondering whether that was the end of James Anderson. Since then, he's had if you just take his career from the start of 2014 to now, that's a career that in itself any fast bowler would be, or any bowler would be proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering whether he would go to the last Ashes just because of his pace dropping off and all that kind of thing. He was our best bowler over there. Admit he bowled a lot dry. But he just goes on and on and on. And, can't leave him out of sight, really, in England.
Yeah.
England batting. So, the first test match is in Trent Bridge. So, firstly, toss will depend a lot. Like, people who's batting first, generally the average is around 300. So, and they have a good batting lineup. And Sibley and we have Burns. I guess like they are just made to compete against England, compete against India. They have a great batting record against India, so I'm pretty sure they are going to give a tough fight to India in the first test.
But also, you talked about that top order a bit earlier. I think I mean, the fact is the last series does colour some of that. If you stack those top orders against each other, Burns has got an average of against India of 14. Sibley's got an average of 16. Crawley's got an average of 16. Lawrence did okay in India. I think the one who I think Sibley possibly, England worry obviously if they must still be seeing Ashwin and Patel in their sleep. I reckon haunting them. Obviously, spin is going to be less of a factor. Clearly, but there's a lot to be said for psychology. It was such a dominance that those two. Yeah, but
I just don't think again, you say it was in India on absolute Bunsen burners. Yeah. It's not just going to be the same. It's going to be English conditions, seaming conditions that English batsmen face every year. I think they'll just put that to the back of their mind. I mean, I was interested that Nakul in his 11 that Hendo told me, he again had Jadeja and Ashwin. Now, I just think that is foolish, to be honest. You're playing in English conditions in a World Test Championship. I think it cost India the fact that they didn't have a fourth seamer. It's pointless in England. It doesn't matter if he's a good batsman. He may be a good batsman, but the problem is you overwork your seam bowlers. You need the extra seam bowler in England. This is my point. Well, this is the problem. If India have an extra seam bowler, they have no batting beyond 7. And this is where I think the Test series will be won. I was just reading an article on Cricket Info about it this morning, and I had to agree with it. I think India's problem is that their lower order their bowlers can't bat for toffee, right? At least England's bowlers can bat a bit, and we got several, decent all-rounders. So I think that's probably where the series will be won and lost, and I think England will edge it.
You've got to balance the 11 somehow. If either you play an extra batter and you go in with 4 bowlers, which could happen, but you are losing options there. I mean, Jadeja with them, and if you're doing that, actually Jadeja has outperformed any of India's other lower middle order options, with the exception of Rishabh Pant in the last few years. Well, I think actually Jadeja was under-bowled in that World Test Championship.
Jadeja in England
could have taken some overs off some of the tiring fast bowlers.
32 does Jadeja with bat and ball against England.
Well, the interesting thing as well is that Jadeja is obviously a lefty, and both top order are heavy on right-handers. I mean, I think that Leach being the only spinner in England's attack, he will probably get a game. Your top 6 is all right-handers. Our top 6 is, without Stokes in it, is now, apart from Sibley, is all right-handers. It might be, this might be sacrilege to the Indians, but dip Ashwin, get in Jadeja. As a spinner and as a bowling attack, I think you always want the ball turning away from you want the majority of the top order are right-handers. You want the chance of the ball turning away from the bat, challenging the outside.
It's not going to happen.
I know it's not going to happen, But that would be my thoughts. He's a very good spin bowler. He'll also keep the economy rate down, as will Ashwin. And Ashwin's very good against lefties, but there aren't that many in the England side now.
Yeah, it's only Rory Burns in the top. Well, certainly in the Burns and Curran in the top seven. In the top seven that I've picked. India is top 5 probably right-handers until you get to Pant and Jadeja. I would be England in those two. You mentioned Jack Leach. I don't want to see another England 11 without a specialist spinner.
Well, I think
that was a huge mistake in the New Zealand Test matches. It just made the attack on pitches that were actually, you talk about seaming conditions. England have sort of said that they want to play on slightly flatter pitches that make their bowlers work a bit harder ahead of the Ashes.
That'll be binned.
Well, I don't. Well, I mean, actually, the weather might force people's hands a little bit, depending on the forecast. At this rate for Trent Bridge isn't great, but obviously things can change. And in the 100, we've seen the pitches get really slow and very dry very quickly. So, I mean, I don't know. Trent Bridge will have a little bit of a break before then. All of this stuff is very speculative.
Just another word in Ashwin's favour, by the way. He played, didn't he, for Surrey?
Yeah.
Got a bit of tap in the first innings against Somerset. 1 for 99, took 6 for 27. As Somerset suddenly thought they were Middlesex and fell over for 69 in 29 overs. So, I mean, he's coming into this series not only with the form, obviously, in India, which you can put to one side. He's just taken 6 for 27 at the Oval, which, excuse me, is not a bad batting track by and large normally. So
he also bowled beautifully.
Really can't ignore that.
He also bowled beautifully in the World Test Championship final with the new ball and with the old ball. I was doing some digging on Ashwin, and people talk about him away from home. Since the start of 2018, he's played 12 away tests, all of them in either South Africa, England, Australia, and New Zealand. In those, he's taken 43 wickets at 28, an average of 28. The mean for all other spinners in those countries in that time is an average of 44, and his economy rate is much better. Ashwin's improved dramatically, even from already being a very good bowler. I think that India playing 2 spinners who can bat balances the 11 very nicely without a seam bowling all-rounder. And if you're playing one, I actually probably would have agreed with Bear up until recently because of how good Jadeja is with the bat, but I just don't think Ashwin's going to get left out.
And don't forget, he has a Test 100, so he can bat as well.
He's not as good at bat as Jadeja, but he is. But
he took 4 wickets in the World Test Championship as well. Pretty, not many runs.
He bowled beautifully.
17.
Yeah, he did. I just think, this is just my preference for angles of attack and whether I want the ball turning away or into the batsman, and where you want that action to happen is in the top order. And I think that you want the ball turning away from the bat, and I think England having Jack Leach and looking at India's top order, considering we don't have that many decent spinners, and I thought Jack Leach bowled really well in India, to be honest, in unfamiliar conditions to him, but he adapted really well. And I think, he's our only spin bowler. Unfortunately, he's a left-arm spinner against a predominantly right-handed, top order. So I think we lucked out a bit there, because I don't think Don Best would be getting a place back in the side. And the only other option, as you were saying earlier before the game, is Moeen Ali. Leaving him out I was quite surprised again that he's not in the squad. I don't know what's going on with him and the ECB at the moment. But coincidentally, with your top order being right-handers, I think he'd have struggled against them. I mean, he bowls usually quite well in England, but he's another right-arm bowler who's good against lefties. He's
bowled beautifully against India on England when India have toured the last 2 times in 2014
True.
and 2018.
Agreed.
For later in the series, I would not be at all surprised if Matt Parkinson makes a Test debut at some point later in this series.
Not penciled in for the first 2, is he? So he's
no, but not for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Test. Matt Parkinson has been bowling magnificently this year in all forms of cricket. His county championship numbers are very solid. He spins the ball a mile. I think they'd be looking at him for the Ashes, and from what we've heard, England don't want to go into that Ashes series with any debutants, with any one player who would be making a debut in Australia, with everything that comes with that. Matt Parkinson at Headingley, which can take turn, and certainly the Old Trafford and the Oval later in the summer. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Matt Parkinson plays at some point later in the summer. But Jack Leach is a fine bowler, and bowled particularly well at. I was really impressed with how he bowled to Pujara in particular Pujara, who averaged 160 against left-arm finger spin before the series, got out 4 times at 15 to Leach in that series, and he set him up beautifully. He's a very
He's a canny bowler.
He knows his game. He's in very good control of his game. He knows how to set his own fields, and he can bowl that kind of dry holding role, or he can be a wicket taker. I don't think Jet Leach will let anybody down.
No, Matt Parkinson, is he the same chap who bowled the ball of the century in 100 recently?
Yeah. Although his brother, by the way, is not bad as well. Gets very confusing.
He's also, but luckily they bowl with different hands, which is handy. But Matt Parkinson also bowled a very similar ball that got a lot of social media traction in the county championship, and one in the one-day internationals to Imam ul Haq, which was since 2006 has spun more than any other wicket in ODI hit in one-day internationals. I would not be at all surprised if Matt Parkinson makes a debut later this summer.
My only problem with Matt Parkinson is he bowls too slow through the air. It's difficult because, as you say, he gets good turn, he gets good bounce, doesn't have much of a googly, to be fair. But he's a little bit slow through the air for international cricket, and I think that he needs to add probably 4 or 5 miles an hour to his bowling to be really effective at international cricket. That'd be my opinion.
You might be right. I mean, he's doing well enough at the moment.
Yeah.
I think he's very worth a shot.
So Ben Stokes is a gap which England needs to fill in. Moeen Ali, unexplainable reasons. Hopefully he comes in, maybe later part of the series. Not sure. That's a blatant gap, isn't it, in England?
I think sadly the Moeen Ali in Test cricket ship has sailed.
I think it could be right.
It pains me to say that because I'm a huge Moeen Ali is my favourite England cricketer ever, and I think he brings a lot to this England team when he's playing well. It wasn't very long ago that he was an absolute nailed-on part of England's Test team, but he got messed around badly by Ed Smith during the winter. Being obviously he would have played in Sri Lanka, but for the COVID thing, which is a very flippant way of saying that. But I'll move on for the sake of finishing this sentence. And then he was at the last second asked if he wanted to stay on when he was told he was getting a break, because everyone's got to get a break, and he was going to go play the IPL, which England want him to do. And it then got put into the media as though he had refused to stay on tour, which is just not true.
No,
he was put in a really bad position by Ed Smith, and I think that cost Ed Smith his job, to be honest, as head selector. He bowled okay and took some wickets, but went for some runs. I don't really want to judge it on one Test match, but I'm not sure that there is a place for Moeen Ali. I think they would rather him be playing as much white ball cricket and preparing to be a star of England's T20 World Cup campaign, rather than a bit part player in the Test series.
I'll tell you another question that is going to be really interesting from an England perspective is at what point does Hamid get a go? I mean, he's only played
if everyone fails at the top.
All against India. His average is 43.
In India.
I tell you, he's in my first Test 11.
They just made a ton against India, whilst India were busily breaking each other's fingers in Durham. He was quietly knocking a ton up, which is not bad.
On a pitch that was doing a bit, the bowlers were bowling really, really well. None of the other county select 11, obviously they're not at the same class as Hamid, but he's in my first Test 11 at number 3.
So that's a good timing, Nakul. Why don't we hear your Test 11s on both sides, if you're okay?
Yeah. So I would keep with Rory Burns and Dom Sibley. I don't think they've... they actually batted pretty well against New Zealand, and Sibley, for all of his troubles starting against spin, and Rory Burns against spin as well, they know how to play top of off seam bowling in England. They've been doing it for years. Dom Sibley's entire game is based around defending and leaving against top of off seam bowling. It's not his fault the middle order weren't up to it against New Zealand. He did his job, and Rory Burns is the best opener in England at the moment in first class cricket, and has been for a number of years. I've got Haseeb Hameed at 3. I think that as much as you don't want to rush him back and ruin his confidence again, I think he's so in control of his game at the moment. And Zach Crawley looked better in the One Day International series, but he looked so unsure of himself against New Zealand that I think that there is a hole there that Haseeb Hameed could could do a good job filling. Then Joe Root, Dan Lawrence, Josh Butler, Sam Curran, Ollie Robinson, Jack Leach, Stuart Broad, and James Anderson completes my 11. A little bit harsh on Mark Wood, who's been bowling very well recently, but there will be rotation through this series. I would be surprised if any of the seam bowlers on either side play all 5 Test matches.
Okay.
Oh,
And
I'd go
Tony,
along with that.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'd pretty much go along with that. I notice you haven't got Sam Curran, but
No, I do.
No, he did it.
oh, you did.
did.
Sorry,
Sam Curran's batting 7.
I think Hamid is a good shout. You know, pick a man in form, and if he's in form and shown it against the opposition that he's going to likely come up against, it's not a bad shout at all. I mean, that top 3 is not exactly going to put runs on the board quickly.
No.
And there might be that consideration.
But England fans have been moaning about the lack of solidity in the top 3 for years.
Yeah.
Top
I
six,
mean,
actually.
there's a touch of an overcorrection, but
Yeah.
Crawley has been horribly out of sorts. He's been talking that down. Crawley's been actually saying, I saw in an interview with him last night actually, he was basically saying, well, if you forget the 4 in India as being an exceptional circumstances and put them to one side, I've only had 2 bad tests because he had 2 pretty dodgy ones against New Zealand, remember? But I would go along with that. I think Robinson, for a number of reasons, becomes my man to watch. In English bowling conditions, he can thump the ball with the bat. He's not quite Rishabh Pant, who is a game changer, as we know, and is a player I always look forward to seeing. But I think with both bat and ball, Robinson is an interesting shout, and I'm glad you had him in there, Knuckle. I've got a feeling he's going to put all the unpleasantness behind him, self-induced, I must confess, and quite rightly, he was sort of severely dealt with. It doesn't matter what age he was when he did these things. The fact is, he did them, so a punishment was due. But I think he might just come back and put in a real shift this series. I've got high hopes for Ollie Robinson.
Put it this way, if I were a top order batter, I would not want to face Ollie Robinson with a Duke ball. He doesn't give you a sniff. He's accurate on you all the time. Thumps into the splice of the bat, moves it both ways at 84, 85 miles an hour. He could be very, very difficult to play against. As I say, there will be rotation. This is my team for the first test.
Yeah. Okay.
The only thing, I think they'll just stick with Zach Crawley. I get all your arguments. I just think they'll stick with Zach Crawley. Let's just leave it at that. But the rest of the team, I agree with.
And what about India?
So Rohit Sharma, and Mayank Agarwal to replace the injured Shubman Gill. There might have been a talk about Prithvi Shaw, but he's not going to be. He and Surya Kumar Yadav, who got called in from the Sri Lanka tour after those injuries, won't be here in time for the first test. Or they might be, but they'll be isolating, I think. So Rohit Sharma, Mayank Agarwal, Cheteshwar Pujara, Virat Kohli, Ajinkya Rahane, we assume the word at the moment is that his hamstring niggle is fine and he'll be fit. Rishabh Pant, Ravindra Jadeja, R. Ashwin, Ishant Sharma, Mohammad Shami, Jasprit Bumrah. So, yeah, only the one change from the World Test Championship final 11. Again, there'll be rotation. Siraj, I think, will play 2 or 3 tests this summer. Maybe Umesh Yadav, I'm not sure. I mean, his record, weirdly, he's an Indian specialist fast bowler, which is an odd thing. And you might, at some point later this series, go to, I think particularly at Lords, actually, you might go to an extra batter, somebody like KL Rahul, who's also got who's been in decent form, or Hanuma Vihari. But for the moment,
as well, Rahul,
yes, he did. He did in that county select game. Not the best attack, but a decent sort of county level attack. But I'm sticking with the sort of five batters plus punt plus 2 spinners and 3 fast bowlers.
Okay.
Bumrah's an interesting one. He's had a bit of a shocker this year compared to last year.
Is he fully fit?
I think lack of match practice is what it is. He's been on breaks quite a lot. He got a wedding break, then IPL he played on and off. I think it's the lack of match practice.
I was going to say, because in the World Test Championship, I thought he was a bit off cut. I mean, he bowled a first decent spell, but obviously he looked tired by the end and really wasn't on it. And you just wonder if he's fully fit or not.
He wasn't bad in that World Test Championship final.
No, he wasn't great.
He wasn't on the level of the rest of the fast bowlers for sure. He's in India's best 11. As far as I know, as far as we know, he's fit.
The match practice thing is quite an interesting one. and more so probably from an England perspective. It was a pretty poor show. They got the draw against New Zealand. You can have your different at Lords. You can see that different ways. It's either stoic resistance and grinding out the draw at all costs, or not taking up a challenge. They got pretty tonked at Edgbaston. Then after that, it's been all T20s, ODIs, and then the 100. So they haven't really played some competitive cricket. So despite everything we've been saying, no one would fall over in complete surprise if England were 50 for 4 or 5.
No, well,
this
is England
because of that.
I mean, you can flip that argument the other way as well with India's. I mean, India's top order has better reputations by no, and would fully expect Kohli to score a lot of runs this series, and I think Rohit Sharma will score some runs at some point in this series. But
if Root was to ping a hamstring, I would seriously be.
I'd be in panic mode.
Yeah.
Oh, you're 100% correct on to be that. That would mean, I mean, literally from the point of view of putting out an 11, you're either putting in Crawley or a half-fit Ollie Pope or Johnny Bairstow, who. What's
wrong with Ollie Pope? I hadn't heard he was injured.
He's got a long-standing hamstring injury.
Okay.
I think he'll be, as far as we know, he'll be fit for the second test. Yeah, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if there were a lot of batting collapses on either side, even just given the quality of the bowling on both sides.
Yeah. Oh, I would say that's true. Well, this is where it comes back to. I think India's tail is. I think you need as I said, I think you need the extra seam bowler. But India's tail is really. I mean, they're the second worst from 8 to 11 in the world or something. And if you go 9 to 11, they're the worst in the world at scoring runs. So yeah, I mean. You get through the top six. You get through the top 6 of India, and suddenly, it's party time. Really, if you're a bowler, that's what you're thinking anyway.
Yeah, it'll be interesting series. So Vishak and Santosh, quick reaction between Jadeja and Ashwin. I don't know if both will play, but do you think they will? If not, who will replace one of them on Knuckles?
I think both should play because mainly, as Bear mentioned, our tail is little fragile. So having both of them, that is the reason I think. Even the World Test Championship, they played both of them so that we can extend our batting to number 8. And mind you, Ashwin has got 4 hundreds, and Jadeja also has got a couple of hundreds, and he's got 3 triple centuries in domestic cricket. So both are decent bats. So at least in that way, we can extend our batting till 8. And number 9, 10, 11 are literally they don't bat that much. So Ishan Sharma can stay around. Batting Ishan Sharma can stay around a little bit. But we can't expect much of run. So I think this will be the level.
Shami used to be able to slog and did a little bit in the World Test Championship final, but he can't even really do that anymore. India's only fast bowler in the squad who can actually bat is Shardul Thakur, and he is not as good as the rest of the fast bowlers in the squad at bowling. So you're compromising a strength to hide a weakness if you play.
So are you saying that Patel is really got no chance of playing? Axo, yeah. Do you just keep him to walk past England players in the pavilion just to scare them, and don't actually put him on the pitch? That's his best.
Barring injury, I can't see it.
I don't know. Yeah. If, regardless of the pitch, and of course, I completely understand it. It was a completely different environment, different pitch, different everything. If you've got a bowler that has completely destroyed a team,
yeah,
do you just give him a run just because he has that psychological advantage?
Oh yeah, but he destroyed the team because he could bowl flat darts in at middle and leg and it turned, or he could bowl them at middle and they went straight on.
He was the one bowler who could consistently get the ball to not turn when it was turning square.
Well, exactly, but then when they did turn, obviously they were still beating the outside edge, and that's the thing. If you're on a turning pitch, the ball that doesn't turn is dangerous. But in England, in the first innings, it's likely not to turn at all, in which case you just set up for the non-turning ball. And if it does turn by some miracle, he might get a wicket, but he's no way going to be. He's never going to get anything like his return he got in India.
No. He won't. But it was just such a tremendous performance. Him and Ashwin together was a terrifying prospect.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we don't. The imponderable is what Jadeja would have done in those circumstances.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Akshar Patel, I don't think would let if there were an injury and Akshar had to play, He's not as good with the bat as either Ashwin or Jadeja, but he can bat as a lower order batter, and he would be useful to hold up an end. And if the ball does start turning, he would be useful. But I don't think he's as good with the ball or the bat as either Ashwin or Jadeja.
Last question before we go into predictions of the series. Akshar Patel, yes, not in the 11, but in the 11 which Nakul has put, anybody from India team you would be wary about, wild cards who might pull up a fantastic performance?
Pant every time for me.
Okay.
Well, Pant is your danger man, isn't he? I mean, I've got a theory that I don't think he's going to do particularly well over here. He goes hard at the ball, and if the ball is swinging, that could be his downfall, especially early in his innings. If he gets in, he's a danger. But I think he'll get a ton somewhere, but I think he won't do much out. I don't think he's going to do much in the series. I mean, everyone will be hanging their hopes on him, I think, in India. But
so who's your player?
Made his debut at Trent Bridge.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Virat is the man to watch, isn't he? I mean, here's a potential score. Hatfuls of run. Rahane usually does pretty well in England. He's very well set up for English conditions. Pujara is always a rock. You get him out, and you always think you're in a chance of, actually getting through India. But if he stays there for any length of time, and the only plus with Pujara is that he goes at such a slow rate that he could be out there for 120 balls and only have 30 on the board, in which case the scoreboard never moves on that much. So and then you get him out, you're back in the game. But if he gets a big score, then you're out of the game usually.
It would be really fascinating to see, and it could go a long way to deciding this series, how India's opening pair do. India haven't had an opening pair do well in England for a long time. Maybe not since they last won a series here in 2007. But you got Rohit Sharma, who looks in supreme control of his game, batted pretty well in that World Test Championship final in difficult conditions. Mayank Agarwal, who has a huge amount of first-class runs behind him, and is a very good player of spin, very good if you drop short and wide. If those two can get India off to decent starts, then India do a lot of work that they weren't able to do in the last two series, or three series, really.
Starting with you, predictions, 5 test match series.
Well, the last one series I got horribly wrong, didn't I? Well, I got partially right because England did win a test. Gosh, if you look at series history, crikey, what is it in England? India have only won 3, am I right, ever in England? 14.
The last time we won a series was in 2007.
2007, yeah, I was looking at that. That said, I'm less confident about England's top order. I think it will be pretty balanced. I'm going. Funny enough, I'm going for the same prediction as last time. I'm going 2-2 with one of them drawn.
Okay. Nonsense, Tone. Nonsense. Yeah.
Well, it was nonsense last night, to be fair. But we're not playing in Chennai and where Ahmedabad, are we?
I always go for one test being a draw, just because. I don't know why I always do that, because sometimes it doesn't really happen. But I think India will win a test. I think it'll be 3-1 England. I mean, the last test series here, all the tests were close, but we ended up, I think it was 4-1 last time, wasn't it?
It was the closest 4-1 in test history.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it'll be very similar again, but I do think, again, we'll come out on top with home conditions. And we've got slightly better organised sides.
One test difference to yours.
Nakul?
You've gone 3-1, I went 2-2.
With the proviso that I haven't looked significantly at the weather forecast and I'm not going to predict a rain out at this stage, I've just going 3-2 India. Just about shading the series.
I'll take a bet. I'll bet you £100 on that one.
I'm not gonna put money on it. I'm not that confident of it, for one thing. But in the interest of going for a prediction, I'm going 3-2 India. I think every test pretty much will be close, and I'm really looking forward to this series.
Yeah. Vishak and Santosh. Vishak and Santosh.
It will be India, so I'm going to be pretty positive. We have a good strength, and we have been performing pretty well, especially after the Australia tour. So they have a positive mindset. So it's going to be India for sure.
Scoreline?
3-2.
Okay, Vishak?
No draws.
I feel it will be 3-2 again in favor of India. But it will be a closely fought series, and I think it will go into the last day of the final test to decide.
I like that. If it does, that'll be very interesting.
They'll all be showdown at the Oval.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What about you, Suman? Come on.
I think it will be 3-2 England. It will be a closely fought series, or 3-1 England with one draw. Weather holding good, it will be 3-2. If weather comes into play, it will be 3-1 England. All right. Oh, excellent. Thank you, the Gorillas. As usual, pleasure talking to you guys. Great having you back on the show. Thank you so much, and let's enjoy the series. To the folks who are watching, thanks for watching, and drop us a comment, drop us a like, or let us know what else you would like to hear from Gorillas next time. Until the next episode, see you and stay safe and enjoy the England series. Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot. See you later.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
Take care. Bye.